Author's note. For over 2 decades, Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj gave discourses every evening at his home in Mumbai. In the last 3 years, they were restricted to Thursdays and Sundays. They were so interesting that I made it a point not to miss a single. During those days, there was no tape recorder in the ashram, and so the talks were not being recorded. Hence I thought of meticulously noting down Maharaj's words for my own use. After Maharaj passed away, I got busy jotting down the discourses in a notebook. My husband's elder brother, late Shri Narayan, happened to read the notes and was deeply impacted by them. He gave me his blessing, saying, "One day these notes will turn out to be a valuable book, which will be welcomed by all lovers of Maharaj." During these talks, which were in Marathi, no foreigners were present since there was no one to translate. Only Indian disciples and visitors attended the talks. Maharaj never bothered about the number of listeners present. He didn't cancel the talk even when there was just a single person present. This reminded me of Lord Krishna narrating the Bhagavad Gita to a single listener, Arjuna. Hearing the words emerging from the mouth of Paramatman is a rare phenomenon, and I was fortunate to be in the audience. Those same words are equally effective when read in the form of this book. We cannot deny Maharaj's presence even now, as he was never his body and is present in each one of us as our very being. The benefit we derive by reading these words depends upon our faith and absorption. Maharaj's words are so powerful that they have the capacity to transform the reader. As Maharaj is within us, the only thing that can come in the way of our realization is our own disinterest. Once I had asked Maharaj whether I could realize my true nature in this life. In response, he had put me a counter-question. Was I ready even to die for it? Now, as an old woman, I am ready to die. But at the time when I was asked that question by Maharaj, I was young and wanted to live. Remaining intact as an individual, I wanted realization as an additional achievement. That is the normal worldly habit of getting more without paying the proper price. I was not prepared to surrender my body identity to Maharaj. Hence I preferred to remain ignorant by sacrificing nothing. Now I feel that my going to Maharaj was not my action, but more due to his magnetic attraction. The desireless and fearless state in which Maharaj existed was very tempting to me, but beyond my capacity to attain. Sage Tukaram once said that he was eager to meet Lord Vitala, irrespective of whether the body remained or dropped. He was ready to pay the price, and he got what he wanted. Maharaj was a very simple person and never posed to be different from others. He always tried to convince us that we were like him and not what we imagined ourselves to be. Our ignorance was the result of succumbing to incorrect knowledge, and his words tried to erase that out so that the truth could resurface. Only proper listening was needed, and no action of any kind, neither any kind of practice nor any ritual. He had no expectation of any kind from the listeners except seeing them totally free of ignorance. He proffered to them whatever he knew without any reservation. Maharaj often said that this simple and direct knowledge was made to appear complicated by owners of spiritual shops who could not afford to lose their audience by telling the truth. People who came to Maharaj for boosting their ego were frustrated to see his equal treatment of all visitors. I find no necessity to prove how Maharaj's teaching was different from that of other gurus, as the same becomes clear by reading any book of his. During one discourse, Maharaj noticed some Western seekers in the audience. He didn't tell them to leave just because there was no one translating the talk. Out of his compassion, he asked my husband to translate the talk for them. Mohan was nervous and expressed his inability to do so, since he was a newcomer in the field and had just started learning how to translate. But Maharaj insisted on Mohan translating the talk, sentence by sentence, for the benefit of the foreigners. Maharaj would speak one sentence, which Mohan would translate into English, and only then would Maharaj speak the next sentence. This continued until the end of the discourse, and the visitors were very happy with the special treatment given to them. Little did we know then that the same process would be repeated years after the passing away of Maharaj. Some years ago, Dr. Vanaja, a close disciple of Maharaj, requested Mohan to translate recorded discourses of Maharaj from Marathi into English. Mohan gladly translated all 52 selected discourses, sentence by sentence, with Maharaj's voice followed by the English translation in Mohan's voice. When you listen to these discourses, you feel the same scene repeating, Maharaj speaking and Mohan translating, sentence by sentence. What Maharaj had once done for the benefit of those Western seekers attending his discourse has now been again repeated for the benefit of Vanaja and many other seekers. On another occasion, Maharaj noticed two males sitting amongst the female disciples. In India, men and women traditionally sit in separate sections during a satsang. Maharaj stopped talking and asked those Western seekers to get up and sit with the males. As they were sitting close to me, I had noticed their presence. But as it turned out, they were in fact girls posing as males to avoid nuisance from goons on the crowded pavements of Mumbai. They had done the makeup so adroitly that no one, including Maharaj, suspected them to be girls. Maharaj noticed that they wore a mala, a necklace of rudraksha beads, with their guru's photograph as a pendant. He told them that it was unfaithful to leave their guru and go to another guru, but when they told him that their guru had permitted the visit, he advised them not to bring along their mala to the talks. Only after meeting Maharaj did I realize the purpose of my existence. If I had not met him, my life would have been meaningless without knowing why it was so. I cannot explain this in words, just as an alcoholic cannot explain to a teetotaler the lightness and freedom he feels after a drink. A sage's disciple is fortunate to receive the highest blessing that any human being can receive from someone who is truly godlike. Meeting Maharaj was like meeting Rama or Krishna, who are now worshipped as gods in temples. But while they lived on the earthly plane, they too had faced all the problems related to daily living like the rest of us. The fact that they were self-realized was not of much significance to the masses. They were accepted as great beings simply because they had vanquished evil. Being in the company of Maharaj changed our lives and gave meaning to our existence. Now I am convinced that I was born so that I could sit at his feet. Those 5 years in Maharaj's company were heavenly and filled with blessings. I was fortunate to meet Maharaj, but I am deeply moved by the faith and devotion of the many who never met him personally, but are yet transformed just by reading his books or by listening to his recorded talks. For me, this is proof that Maharaj is available to us right now as our own being. I am convinced that these talks have the potential to transform our lives and help us attain the highest state a human being can attain. Mr. Bertrand Russell once commented that he found the concept of liberation in Hinduism most unacceptable. When asked why, he said that such a state would be utterly boring. Unfortunately, there was no guru to guide Mr. Russell in this matter. However, our own experience with Maharaj may shed some light regarding the condition of a jnani, or a liberated one. We generally visited Maharaj at 5 in the evening. One day we got the bus easily and happened to reach the ashram 30 minutes earlier. We found Maharaj sitting alone with his eyes wide open. When we touched his feet, he spontaneously mentioned that he had cognized his existence only after that touch. A jnani has no I am, which is the cause of all the nuisance. In the mother's womb, as an infant, there was no I am, and hence no trouble. In deep sleep, we are at peace, as there is no knowledge of our being. We never saw Maharaj being bored at any time, because for him there was no sense of being. Maharaj once pointed out to us that each one of us has had the experience of that state of not knowing our existence. What were we prior to our conception? We were the Absolute, our eternal existence. Did we get bored any time then? Not at all. Our boredom started only after we became around 5 years old, with the arrival of I amness. Maharaj's teaching is only to free us from this false I amness. Our true nature is the whole or alone or all one. In that state there are no others and no you. If there is no you, where is the scope for me to exist? Maharaj's words have the potential to purify our consciousness, erase all falsehood and all our suffering. He resides within us to guide us. Let us chant Jai Guru and benefit by his shower of grace. Jayashri Mohan, Gaitonde, Lonavala. Love of existence departs with self-realization. From the lowest life form, such as a worm, to the highest, a human being, all exult in the feeling of the phenomena of living, but they do so with the idea of body being its true nature. Mind, intellect, ego, and I consciousness arising within us are the aspects of the life force, prana. The one who is the knower of prana is truly nameless and indescribable. The one who firmly believes in the teachings of a realized master and cognizes the truth as his or her own intuitive experience is on the proper path to liberation. That one is always the timeless self. Just as one needs no reminding that he or she is a male or a female, so should one need no reminder about being the changeless principle witnessing all phenomena, including one's own individuality. One should dwell with the deep-rooted understanding of one's true nature in all aspects of life. The mantra, I am that is chanted attains oneness with the prana. The primal knowledge is the pure knowledge of existence, the feeling that I exist. When this knowledge gets hold of a name or form, it also inherits birth and death. The true aspirant and earnest seeker of this knowledge is not beyond the names and the forms as he is established in the pure awareness prior to mind. What is prior to knowingness is known as nirguna, the one free of all attributes. The experience that I exist in the body does not belong to the body or the mind, but to the pure awareness, which is also called as God or Vasudeva. The fragrance of this knowingness is due to Paramatman, the Supreme Self. In terms of the Absolute, the experience of the outside world is just a waking dream. The knowingness is the source of the states called waking and dreaming. Where there is no dreaming, there is no world outside. Where there is an experience of I am, the world is bound to appear. Once the true nature is revealed to the individual, he or she does not continue to be a sadhaka, a seeker, who needs to seek in order to be united with the self. The experience of being I am is time-bound since it needs this perishable body, which is nothing but a product of the 5 elements that are necessary for its sustenance. The knower of this truth transcends time. The constant awareness of our consciousness being Ishvara is the real worship of God, the only effective sadhana. our love to exist is due to ignorance. This ignorance finally ends up being the self-knowledge. Attention to our consciousness is meditation. When the pure existence comes to know of its being during birth, the name and form follows, and the individuality or the sense of I appears. But to the one whom this sense of I happens is not the body or the senses or the mind or the prana, but he is their knower. Mind is the effect and life force is its cause. It is the power of prana that does everything. Prana exists along with sattva, the quintessence of the food. Atman is the witness of this play. The body consciousness appears with the appearance of individuality. With that, the awareness of one's true nature is then forgotten. This is the primordial ignorance, the avidya, the maya, giving rise to illusion. The substance due to which the life forms arise on this planet is also its food. Our food is not different from what our bodies are made of. Knowingness or the experience of being brings about identification with the body. Then the talk of birth, death, heaven, and hell makes sense to the embodied one. This understanding gets strengthened as the days go by and become firmly rooted. The play of the three gunas, or the qualities sattva, rajas, and tamas, begins due to sattva. These are the three attributes of the tendencies of manifestation that govern life. Sattva or sattva guna exhibits altruism and kindness in a person. Rajas or rajoguna prompts activity, such as being busy in an enterprise. Tamoguna brings about the sense of doership, the feeling that I am the doer of all actions. Dhyana or meditation is to be in harmony with the consciousness or to keep our attention to the self. Jnana is knowing one's real nature and holding on to oneself. It is to know the source of consciousness. Paramatman is not aware of himself and needs the food-body-mind to know its own existence. Prana is responsible for all the activity as the self is just a witness. We love to exist, and this self-love needs food for its sustenance. Thus, sattva, or the quintessence of food, is necessary for the manifestation of the unmanifest. The knowledge that I exist is called aham-bhav, but ahamkar is presuming the body-mind complex as the true I. Due to the result of association with the body, the self forgets its own true nature and attaches itself to the body. Once unaware of one's own existence, the self is now the blissful knower of its beingness. What has happened is that Paramatman became aware of the news of its own being. The Lord of the universe has forgotten its true nature and is now attached to the sense of individuality. That which was bliss itself, or the Ananda Swarupa, just became aware of the bliss. But being aware of one's own being has its problems. It brings about forgetfulness of one's true nature owing to the attachment to the body, which is made up of nothing but the food. It is as though one considers oneself as a heap of food. With the awareness of one's true nature having been lost, the unavoidable pleasures and pains associated with the mortal body become its only assets. Suffering becomes unavoidable. This is the reason that in the waking state, the tendency of the mind is to look outwards for happiness. Its outlook is directed only to the food body, and as a consequence, the outside world is perceived through its senses. Only when the food body is erased from one's awareness as in deep sleep, the individual consciousness becomes the universal consciousness or the Paramatma Swarupa. The light from the entire manifestation converges to a single point, to the source of existence itself. The mind is limited to the body, but Atma is beyond its realm. When the body is forgotten, only Atma remains. It appears as if the Atma is earned at the price of the body. Our human existence is temporary, and in reality we are nothing but the eternal Paramatman. Our consciousness loves to continue its existence. This book in my hand, Das Bodh, is for a true disciple who has totally surrendered to the Guru and has complete faith in his words. The disciple is not separate, but a part of Guru's infinite nature. Seeing God is realizing one's own true and eternal nature. True devotion to the Guru is knowing one's true nature through the Master. One who listens to the words of the Master and verifies its truth by his or her own intuitive experience is a true and worthy disciple. This talk today is meant for such worthy disciples. The feeling that I exist that occurs spontaneously within each of us is veiled by the body, and thus has become ego. The Satguru now has taken up the task to awaken the disciple from this dream. The parents gave this body to the child, but the Guru will now provide liberation or realization of being Brahman. A mother says to her child, "You are a boy or a girl with so-and-so name." In giving the name to a child, the parents have merely made him the owner of a few letters of the alphabet. The mind immediately identifies itself with those alphabets and becomes one with its label. This knowingness was dormant in the womb and arises a few years after the birth. Only when the Guru provides the mantra, "You are that," is the seed of Jnana sown in the heart of the seeker. The first concept that I am born and will die one day disappears. Even while being in the body, the seeker who follows this mantra realizes the fact that he is the unborn and the unchanging principle that merely appears as the body-mind complex due to ignorance. By the all-powerful grace of the Master, the ignorance of the mind is warded off and replaced by Jnana. This Jnana, or the pure knowledge, is the light that illumines all other knowledge. This knowledge illumines the mind but is incomprehensible by it. This knowledge shines forth and gives rise to all that is. Just as the tongue itself, being tasteless, enables us to correctly judge different tastes, pure consciousness is untouched by concepts but enables us to conceive everything. Rare is the one, with complete faith and surrender to the Guru's words, sees this truth as one's own inner self and becomes one with Parabrahman. This is the result of correct understanding of the teachings of the Guru. True devotion is having complete faith in Guru's words. The perceiver of all is itself imperceptible. The knowledge of being is formless and is experienced by everyone in every moment. This is the supreme knowledge. By total devotion, make your experience free in all respects and get enlightened. That which enables you to know that you are, and also that the world is Paramatman. With this knowledge, let there be constant awareness of your true nature that is untouched by the body and the mind. This will free the bindings of karma. The key to self-realization is the word of the Guru. His words are the only ones worth remembering. Your entire life you believed the name given by your parents to be yourself, and you made it into your signature, without realizing that this name, being a limiting adjunct, brings the warrant of death along with it. The name provided to you by the Guru, that you are the immortal Brahman, is a liberating one. There is no more teaching necessary. To the one who accepts the instructions of the Master and cognizes their reality as their own intuitive self-experience. Swanubhava, such a one cognizes the truth within not as a new revelation, but as ever existing, undiminishing and spontaneous awareness, which was just overshadowed by ignorance and hence has so far been overlooked. Atman is not just a few alphabets, but it is its knower and is bodiless like consciousness. The knowledge provided by the Guru exalts all the virtues in the seeker. The one who chants Guru Mantra with total devotion alone understands the way in which Brahman manifests and conducts itself in various manners while being unchanged and untouched. The mind cannot comprehend the self, but it is the formless self that illumines the mind. That which objectifies the mind is itself disembodied. The eyes that can see never perceive the self, but it is the act of seeing itself which is illumined by it. All that is ever seen is seen by the self alone. A crystal that is in proximity of a colorful object appears to be of the same color as the object. However, we know that the crystal itself is untouched by the reflected color and is colorless. In the same way, the Atman shines due to sattva and is itself untouched by the qualities of sattva. The self of a person is not bound or tarnished by any traits which are manifested in a being. Hence, one can vigorously live in the body while remembering that their true nature is untouched even by their own body. You can use your body to the fullest without being identified or attached to it. Attention turns into inattention. That which supports the life in us, the prana, speaks through the mind. Mind is the language of prana. Even before the knowingness came about, the body was born in order to support prana. Until there is this body, there is no possibility of experiencing the thoughts or the disturbances in the mind. At first, there is the appearance of sattva, which is then followed by consciousness, a sense of being and knowledge of time. The word Brahma is a combination of Bra, word, and Hami, sense of being. The word or feeling of one's presence begins with the sense of being, which is nothing but the quality of sattva or the food essence. This gives rise to the manifested Brahma. Time and the rest of the qualities arise with our sense of existence. When prana leaves the body, the sense of being vanishes, and with it the consciousness becomes unconditioned and free of attributes. Since the personal consciousness or the feeling that I exist is the product of the body-mind complex, this knowingness too must end with the demise of the body-mind complex. Atma, or the self that appeared as the body-mind complex, now remains without form, absorbed in its true nature, which is bliss itself. All the functions in the body and all activities are due to prana, with the help of mind when necessary. Atma appears to manifest as various forms, but when one attains jnana, one gets established into the blissful state of the self, where multiplicity is not experienced. The non-dual awareness of being which is experienced by an enlightened person, is blissful. Paramatman or Parabrahman is the true nature of a jnani. After hearing this, the attention must perpetually be turned towards itself. Gradually then, the teaching pervades the whole being, and eventually it reveals one's true nature. Even the one who simply turns his attention inwards disappears, and only the pure awareness remains. The one who is paying attention, the entity or the seeker of truth, disappears. The prana functions in the body through the mind, and prana's languages are para, pashanti, madhyama, and vaikari. Our sense of being and the knowledge of the world always coexist. Always remember that even for the most magnificent object, the one who sees it exists prior to it. One has to hold this knowledge which is being heard. That makes this knowledge pervade through his being, and that is our true nature, which ultimately remains after our attention merges into that, which is the nature of attention. Then what remains is the Atma, of which consciousness is just an expression. What is Jnana? Srimad Bhagavat bestows much importance to the devotion of Satguru. In Marathi, Shiv has two meanings. It means Lord Shiva, and it also means to touch. There is no one whom the experience of existence has not touched. Although we may not be conscious about it, each one of us knows of his or her existence. This is the knowledge: I exist. You must redirect your attention to this simple, ever-existing experience and see that the mind loses its natural tendency to move outwards. In Marathi, the word naman, salutation, it also implies no mind, no man, salutations to that which is present before the mind rises, the one who is also present while the mind plays about and continues to be present after the mind sinks. This is naman, the salutation which alone can destroy the individuality that binds you to the body-mind complex, causing the suffering of samsara. Then there is only the pure being without the feeling of being separate from the whole. The one who witnesses the experience of existence is the real Satguru. Such a guru is to be worshipped. True worship is to know the witness or the knower of the consciousness. This witness is not limited to an individual but is common to everyone. The Satguru who gives you on this path of knowing the knower is eternally within you. He protects you from all the hurdles of this path. God is everywhere. He is within you as your consciousness. Jnana is like an infinite space. Jnana includes the entire manifestation of the universe, including our personal consciousness. But Jnana and the universe coexist. One cannot exist without the other. For instance, in deep sleep there is no jnana, or the awareness that I exist. Nor does the universe exist in deep sleep. It is jnani's consciousness that continues to act in the world. The one who has faith in the Satguru has transcended the fear of death. The fear of death is due to death itself. With jnana, the concepts such as birth and death vanish. The constant remembrance of the teaching of the Satguru is the real Guru Bhakti, the devotion to Guru. The illusion that has no beginning simply leaves the person who faithfully follows the instructions of the Satguru. Even the world worships and serves the person who is completely devoted to Satguru. How can we find a true disciple? A true disciple follows his Satguru in every way and has no existence without him. He believes his consciousness to be nothing but the feet of his Guru. Guru's prana sustains the life in the disciple. Guru's words are considered as Vedas and Shrutis for him, and the disciple speaks of nothing else. For such a disciple, the Guru's very existence is blissful, and the words uttered by him are filled with wisdom. One must continuously contemplate Satguru's words and become one with them. The disciple loses his separate existence and only Guru remains. Maya, the cosmic illusion that causes all the suffering, serves a true disciple of a Satguru. There are a couple of words in Marathi that are related to each other, swapan and swapna. Swapan means the sense of being, the experience that I exist. Swapna means a dream. The entire manifestation is the swapna, a dream scene due to one's existence. A Satguru is always blissful. When he speaks, the words lead to self-knowledge. Meditate on his words and you will become one with them. Our beingness that delivers this world is nothing but a dream. Paramatman is the true knower. A person does not realize the self due to a strong identification with the body. Unless the notion, I am the body, is given up, wisdom cannot dawn. The one who abandons the attachment to the body alone qualifies to realize the Atma. Absence of worldly passions leads to self-knowledge. He cannot differentiate between his own self and God. Such a person doesn't need to conform to the time scale of the world, as he is prior to the phenomenon of time. Just as the end of a dream does not mean the demise of the one who witnesses the dream, similarly, when prana leaves the body and the world vanishes, the one who witnesses this phenomenon is unaffected. Prana leaves the body during the death of the body, and at that instant the world disappears. The witness to these phenomena remains unchanged. The disappearance of the body and prana means that it becomes universal. The knower of this remains unchanged. There is nothing holier and more immaculate than consciousness. The mind takes control of the life because we accentuate our body. The thoughts occurring spontaneously in the mind are believed to be our own, but to the one who is established in the self and is thus free from the body identity, that one does not need the support of the mind. The one who has disconnected oneself from the sense of individuality and has realized one's manifested nature is free from the prison of the mind. For him, the idea that I am so-and-so ends, giving way to the unmanifested nature. How can mind affect such a one? The light of consciousness in the body that illuminates the being also illuminates the entire universe, including the sun, the moon, and the space. This knowledge of being is immaculate and holier than everything else in the universe. When prana leaves the body, the jnana does not leave or go anywhere. The knower of consciousness becomes unconditioned and free of all attributes. It is like the silence of the musical instrument. When the musician takes his hand off it, the sound vanishes, merging into space. Consciousness is your wealth. Performing pious deeds does not qualify you for jnana. Jnana is to be achieved by association with the jnanis. the one who is ever established in the true and eternal self, is a sage. The company of such a sage alone gives you the knowledge that frees you from the involvement with actions. The sage affirms to you that he is the self. You must listen to him attentively with faith and conviction. He is in fact describing you. Only then will you realize it as your own true self. Only then will you know the true nature of your Satguru. As the untrue becomes known, it is dropped at that very instant. The knower of this becomes calm, and then the self that is ever present reveals itself. The company of a sage, or of the knower of truth, brings the knowledge of one's eternal presence even before self-realization. The one who constantly dwells in the fear of death has not realized his own true nature. Once the truth of one's true nature is revealed, the fact that one is essentially eternal, being unborn and undying, he is steadfastly brought home. Further, the knowledge of being eternal makes the truth absolutely clear to the disciple. When there is a sense of being, there is a natural flow of thoughts and feelings, and the person behaves accordingly. Such a person, who has followed this path of nivritti, or the detachment from knowingness, knows that he is already eternally free, and that liberation is not needed for him. With the knowledge of this truth, one's eternal nature becomes clear. Vice versa, the one who knows one's eternal nature also realizes the truth clearly. There's neither me nor the other. By imbibing the teachings of the Satguru, and by getting absorbed in the Lord Janardana, one realizes that the concept of birth and death is a myth. One also realizes that the sense of I is untrue. When the concepts of birth and death are erased, what remains is the unborn principle. That which cannot be erased after negating all that is false is the Satguru, or Parabrahman. That is your true nature, which is changeless. When that happens, the personal consciousness becomes one with the cosmic consciousness. The grace of the Satguru is the knowledge of Swarupa, our true nature. The Guru's grace is in proportion to one's faith in the words of the Guru. As the faith in the teachings of the Satguru grows, the knowledge of one's true nature is increasingly revealed. When the source of one's consciousness is identified and is cognized as one's true nature, his or her astral body ends. The body-mind complex of such a person may continue to exist, but he has identified himself with God. For such a person, the sense of being does not remain. This is the state of Parabrahman or Kaivalya, the absolute oneness. When there is only pure awareness and the mind does not wander outwards, when there is nothing other than the self, who can give attention to whom? There is neither me nor the others in the non-dual state of awareness. Hence, there are no desires, wants, or duties for such a jnani, who is called Nishkama Parabrahman. Before the allotted time in this life is over, wake up from the delusion that you are bound by time. The real bliss is to cognize that you are not bound by time. Whatever you understand by the mind is limited in time, and hence is perishable. But that which dwells in you, the one who witnesses the time, is Nitya, the imperishable. True bliss is to cognize the timeless nature of our being, that unchanging principle which exists before the universe arises and continues to exist after it is set, is your true nature. This has to be cognized as one's own direct experience. The knowledge of being is God. Adore that. Jnanis know the difference between what is nitya, eternal, and what is anitya, transitory, impermanent. They accept the eternal and become tranquil. By using the power of discrimination, they are able to get rid of mental concepts and attain knowledge of the gross, subtle, and the causal bodies from sattva. It is nothing but the quintessence of food that forms the gross bodies. The enlightened person knows that the body is merely a product of the food material that is consumed, and this enables one to be conscious of one's being. He knows that the gross and subtle aspects, which are identification with the body and mind of one's being, are in fact a product of ignorance. He knows that the physical properties of time and space do not apply to his true nature. Thus, he becomes the knower of time and space. The food that nourishes our body also enables us to know our existence. But whatever can be studied and known is transitory, and it eventually disappears. The formless one, that manifests all the transactions that take place in the world, is not involved in the doing or the non-doing. Just as space is unmoved, the self is unmoved by happenings, actions, and transactions. Brahman, that which is always full, has no limits, no being, nor becomes anything. But when it manifests as Saguna Brahman, the one with attributes, it is bound by time. The form and the contents of an embryo are clear to the Guru. We can see things only after they have happened. A jnani observes who is born, and it becomes obvious to him that it is not his birth. The knower of Brahman, though dwelling in consciousness, remains unaffected by the vicissitudes of life. Prana, the life force, flows from the knowingness. Thoughts emerge from the prana and bind the person into concepts of bondage. True liberation is being free from false concepts about oneself. And the jnani is beyond description. One must worship one's consciousness as God. This will please it. Our consciousness is the feet of the Guru. In reality, even now, the seeker of truth does not exist as a body-mind complex. However, by the light of his consciousness, the three qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamas appear. The consciousness of the seeker is the feet of the Guru. These feet are now here with me. They are responsible for bringing you here. It is the grace of Satguru that has revealed the universal consciousness. How can an aspirant who assumes to be the body and hopes to gain self enjoy the nectar of touching the Guru's feet? His work can only be done by the grace of the Guru. By Guru's grace, he understands that the one who is now born is in reality the self that is free from birth and death. It is this nectar which is responsible for the birth of the body. The nature of the Guru is pure consciousness. When the disciple accepts this pure consciousness as his true nature, that is his birth as God. When this is followed by self-realization, the disciple becomes a Guru. Such an enlightenment is not possible without a Guru. One must love consciousness and have total devotion towards it. At the very least, before going to sleep, Remember the feet of your Satguru and recollect his teachings so that it becomes your own realization. The reward of Guru Bhakti, or the faith and devotion to Guru, truly is liberation. It is to be one with the eternal, the truth, the absolute.